In 1963 Mississippi, Abilene Clark is sharing her life story with the writer. Abilene grew up on a plantation, where she knew from an early age that she would become a maid, just like her mother and grandmother before her. Over the years, Abilene has cared for 17 white children, while her own child was looked after by someone else. Currently, she works for the Leafold family, where the wife, socialite Elizabeth, pays little attention to her daughter May, leaving Abilene to do most of the parenting for just 95 cents an hour. The idea for a book emerges when Skeeter Phelan returns home after graduating from college. Skeeter had applied for a job at a prestigious New York publishing house, but she was told she needed more experience. So she applies for a position at the local newspaper, where she is given a job answering cleaning questions in the housewife column, earning $8 a week. Abilene shares with the reader her close friendship with Minnie Jackson, a maid working for the Holbrook family. Hilly Holbrook, the wife, leads the women's socialite group and serves as president of the city's junior league. Recently, Hilly brought her sick mother, Mrs. Walters, to live with her, which required firing her own maid to make room for Minnie, who is the town's best cook and makes pies that Hilly adores. Minnie helped Abilene cope with the loss of her son 4 years ago. On the day, Hilly hosts the bridge club. Minnie and Abilene have the opportunity to gossip together while working in the kitchen. Minnie tells Abilene about Hilly's latest transgression, marking the toilet paper to ensure Minnie isn't using their bathroom. This prompts Minnie to carry her own toilet paper. Skeeter attends the gathering and receives a warm welcome from her old friends, but the atmosphere becomes tense when she mentions her new job, as she has always been considered odd for not marrying. The tension rises again when Skeeter asks Elizabeth for permission to speak with Abilene later to help her answer cleaning questions. This forces Elizabeth to admit that her own maid quit, which is considered scandalous. At that moment, Abilene answers the phone and speaks with Celia Foote, a housewife ostracized by the socialites for marrying Hilly's ex Johnny. Elizabeth refuses to take Celia's call, so Celia asks Abilene if she knows of any available maids, but Abilene cannot help her. After the women mock Celia, the conversation turns to bathrooms. Hilly refuses to use Elizabeth's guest bathroom because the maid also uses it, and she believes Elizabeth should build a separate bathroom for the maid. Hilly is convinced that African Americans carry different diseases, which is why she has drafted the Home Health Sanitation Initiative, a proposal requiring every home to have a separate bathroom for colored help. When the meeting concludes, Skeeter asks Abilene to help her with the letters, and Abilene agrees. Skeeter also apologizes for the bathroom conversation Abilene had to endure before asking about her old maid, Constantine. Abilene, who was friends with Constantine and hasn't seen her in a while, is shocked to hear Skeeter claim that Constantine quit, knowing it's not true. Before Skeeter can ask more questions, Elizabeth interrupts and hands Skeeter Hilly's initiative for inclusion in the League newsletter. Skeeter then returns home to discuss Constantine with her mother, Charlotte, who refuses to answer any questions and is upset that Skeeter got a job, fearing she will never marry. During dinner with her family, Skeeter inquires about Constantine again. Her father lies, so Skeeter presses for the truth and learns that Constantine was fired after 29 years of service. An argument ensues, and when Charlotte refuses to acknowledge that Constantine was the one who truly raised Skeeter, Skeeter storms out of the house, recalling how Constantine would comfort her whenever she was upset as a teenager. This sparks an idea in Skeeter. She wants to write a book revealing the real stories of maids' lives, providing insight into their experiences. The following day, Skeeter visits Abilene to seek her help with the column letters, while a construction worker begins planning the additional bathroom. When they are certain no one can overhear them, Skeeter asks Abilene to share her stories for the book, but Abilene declines. Their conversation is interrupted when Elizabeth arrives, arguing with her husband, who is unhappy about the extra bathroom. He ultimately leaves in a huff. When May starts crying and Abilene goes to check on her, Elizabeth tells Skeeter that she can no longer discuss the letters with Abilene. Later that night, a tornado sweeps through town. Minnie is frightened to use the outdoor bathroom, but Hilly forbids her from using the indoor one. Minnie secretly uses Hilly's bathroom, but Hilly discovers her transgression and fires her. Some days later, Abilene's bathroom is completed, forcing her to use the outdoor facility as well. However, she experiences a tender moment when May calls her her real mom. Skeeter stops by Abilene's neighborhood to ask for her help once more, causing Abilene to miss her bus. Abilene declines again, explaining that her cousin was burned simply for walking near the voting station, so she won't risk her life for the book. Skeeter gives Abilene her phone number, and after Abilene turns down her offer of a car ride, Skeeter decides to research the laws governing the conduct of non-whites, discovering numerous appalling regulations. For instance, publishing ideas about equality could lead to imprisonment, books cannot be exchanged between white and colored schools, and colored barbers cannot serve white females. Later in the evening, Abilene receives a call from Minnie, who says she did something terrible. Hilly had told everyone in town that Minnie was a thief, so Minnie retaliated with a special pie. Minnie doesn't reveal the details of what made the pie so awful, but she breaks down in tears, fearing she will never find another job. Their conversation is abruptly cut short when Minnie's husband comes home and begins beating her for losing her job. Abilene is left contemplating the idea of the book. After listening to her pastor speak about God wanting his people to be brave, she calls Skeeter to come over and share some stories. Skeeter parks her car far from Abilene's house to avoid being seen by neighbors and assures Abilene that she doesn't mind if the stories portray white people negatively. Her goal is to publish the truth. This brings us back to the beginning of the story. Meanwhile, Hilly's new maid requests a loan of $75 to send her children to college, offering to work for free for a few days to repay the debt. Hilly coldly refuses, claiming she's doing the maid a favor because God doesn't provide charity to those who are capable. A few days later, Minnie's husband forces their daughter to quit school and become a maid to help with their financial situation. Minnie, jobless for many days, is inspired by Abilene's suggestion to seek employment from Celia, who likely hasn't heard Hilly's lies about Minnie. Celia warmly welcomes Minnie, as she is a terrible housekeeper and desperately needs help, particularly now that she's expecting a child. Celia offers Minnie the job on the condition that she keeps her employment a secret from Celia's husband, Johnny. Minnie agrees to the arrangement. During the next Junior League meeting, Hilly announces that her health initiative has been submitted to the governor and reminds Skeeter to include it in the newsletter. Skeeter, reluctant to publish the initiative, lies and promises to do it soon. As the interviews with Abilene progress, they begin to discuss Elizabeth's shortcomings as a mother. Minnie interrupts them, initially chastising them for their risky project, but quickly changes her mind and starts sharing numerous stories with Skeeter, vowing to try to persuade other maids to contribute as well. On the following Saturday, Hilly introduces Skeeter to Stuart, and the two go on a double date. Unfortunately, Stuart behaves terribly, which angers Skeeter, causing her to leave the restaurant before even ordering. Meanwhile, Minnie and Celia become friends, with Celia treating Minnie respectfully and even requesting her company during lunch. Later, Skeeter receives feedback from the editor. Her stories are compelling, but she needs at least a dozen maids to participate in order to be published. Abilene and Minnie have already asked everyone they know, but fear prevents other maids from joining the project. Minnie suggests that since they're already using pseudonyms, they could attribute some of her stories to other maids. Skeeter hesitates, as this would compromise the book's authenticity. To encourage Skeeter not to give up, Abilene finally shares the tragic story of her son's death at the age of 24. The book represents Abilene's chance to find closure. The next day, Stuart apologizes to Skeeter for his behavior during their date. He explains that he was still upset about a recent breakup and that Hilly had forced him to go on the date, which is why he was inebriated. Skeeter speaks her mind, and Stuart finds her candor refreshing. Because Stuart demonstrates respect, Skeeter agrees to another date, which goes well. The two begin dating seriously. When Skeeter finally starts working on the newsletter, she decides to have some fun and alters a few words in her article. As a result, Hilly's Coat Drive is published as a toilet drive, and Hilly wakes up to find her yard filled with old toilets. Civil rights activist Medgar Wiley Evers' fight for equality is a significant topic on television, but Charlotte forbids anyone in her house from watching his speech. Later that night, Abilene and other black people are forced to leave the bus due to unrest on the streets. Evers has been assassinated in front of his own children. Abilene seeks refuge at Minnie's for the night, and though they are now more frightened about their book project, they agree to proceed with caution and continue working on it. The next day, Minnie discovers Celia bleeding in the bathroom, having suffered a miscarriage. Minnie helps her to bed and cares for her while Celia confides her concerns. Johnny married her because she was pregnant, but she lost that baby a month later. Since then, she has endured 3 more miscarriages, including the most recent one, but has kept them secret from Johnny. Celia fears her husband will leave her, but Minnie reassures her that he will eventually come to terms with it. Later, Celia buries the baby in the garden under a plant, as she has done with the others. In the meantime, Hilly's maid is arrested in front of the other maids. She had found a ring while cleaning under the couch and tried to sell it at a pawn shop. The suspicious clerk called the police. When Skeeter visits Ebeline, she is astonished to find numerous maids now willing to share their stories, as the morning's arrest has pushed them to their limits. The accounts reveal various forms of mistreatment, and the most disheartening aspect is learning that the children they raised grew up to be as cruel as their parents. The following day, the socialites hold a new bridge club party, and Celia attempts to join them, even bringing a pie with her as a gesture of goodwill. The other women at the event avoid and snub Celia, causing her to leave the gathering in tears. When Celia arrives home, May chastises her for trying to be friends with such awful people and clarifies that the women despise her because she married Johnny. Celia misunderstands the situation, thinking the women believed Johnny was unfaithful to Hilly, when in reality, his relationship with Celia began after his involvement with Hilly had ended. Celia decides to set the record straight at the upcoming benefit event. Minnie advises against attending, but Celia diverts the conversation by tending to Minnie's injury, knowing it was inflicted by Minnie's abusive husband. Celia suggests Minnie retaliate with a skillet and leave her husband, but Minnie is concerned for her children. A few days later, President Kennedy is assassinated. Abilene becomes increasingly anxious about being discovered again, so Minnie decides to share a terrible secret as insurance. It turns out that the special pie she gave to Hilly was made with her own feces, and Mrs. Walters saw her daughter consume 2 slices, laughing heartily at the situation. This led Hilly to send her mother to a nursing home. Ebeline and Skeeter believe including the story in the book is a bad idea because it would reveal Minnie's identity, but Minnie argues that Hilly would never want anyone to know she ate feces, making the story the perfect protection against being identified. On the night of the charity event, Johnny and Celia's presence makes the other socialites uneasy. While distributing bidding prizes, Minnie's chocolate pie is awarded to Hilly, who did not put her name down for it. A drunken Celia approaches Hilly to explain that Johnny did not cheat on her, accidentally ripping Hilly's dress sleeve in the process. Johnny escorts his wife away as she starts causing a scene, but Celia ends up vomiting on the floor. After the event, Mrs. Walters takes the pie with her and confesses that she bid on it using Hilly's name, just to annoy her daughter for sending her to the nursing home. The next day, Celia realizes she is not cut out for high society life and considers leaving Johnny. However, Minnie convinces her to stay, arguing that if she leaves, Hilly's manipulations will triumph. Meanwhile, Skeeter is almost finished with the book and only needs one last story, Constantine's. She pressures her mother into revealing the truth. Months earlier, Charlotte hosted a Daughters of America luncheon after being appointed state regent. The meal was interrupted by the arrival of Constantine's daughter Rachel, who was not expected until the following week. Charlotte usually allows Rachel to enter the house like anyone else, but on this day, she makes her way in the kitchen. Rachel refuses to use the service door and enters the house anyway, demanding to see her mother. Under pressure from the judgmental socialites, Charlotte gives in and kicks both Rachel and Constantine out. The next day, Charlotte went to Constantine's house to take her back, but she had already left with Rachel. Charlotte sent her son to Chicago, where Rachel lives, to try to reconcile, but it was too late. Constantine had died. Charlotte attempts to apologize for her actions, but Skeeter leaves in tears. After visiting Constantine's empty house to write the final story, Skeeter sends the book to the editor, who offers her a meager advance that she still sends to the Maids. The book, published anonymously, becomes a success. Even Mrs. Walters reads it in a nursing home. Recognizing the pie story, she finds it amusing and urges Hilly to read the book as well. Unfortunately, Skeeter's triumph is short-lived, as Stuart breaks up with her after she confesses to being the book's author, accusing her of being selfish. Upon reading the book, Hilly becomes frantic and attempts to quash rumors circulating among her friends that the stories might be from their own town. Her rage peaks when she receives a check for her charity from Celia, made out to 2 Slice Hilly. Enraged, Hilly confronts Skeeter, who has just received a job offer from a publishing company. Hilly threatens Skeeter with legal action, but Skeeter counters that to do so, Hilly would have to publicly admit to eating the tainted pie. At this point, Charlotte intervenes to defend her daughter and kicks Hilly out. Afterwards, Charlotte expresses pride in Skeeter, congratulates her on the new job, and thanks her for restoring courage to their family. In the meantime, Minnie becomes frightened when Johnny approaches her unexpectedly, but he is not there to harm her. Celia has finally revealed to him the truth about her miscarriages, and Johnny is there to thank Minnie for supporting his wife. He acknowledges that he was always aware of Celia's hired help and notes that Celia has been much happier since Minnie's arrival. Johnny then takes Minnie back to his house, where Celia has prepared a meal on her own. Johnny offers Minnie a permanent position in his household, which Minnie accepts. This gives Minnie the courage to take her children and leave her abusive husband. The next time Aibileen and Minnie attend church, they are greeted with a standing ovation. To express their gratitude for the maid's bravery, the entire community has signed the book as a gift to compensate for the absence of Aibileen's name on the cover. After the service, they bring the book to Skeeter to show her the impact she has made. Skeeter admits that she is hesitant to accept the job offer in New York, fearing she cannot leave Aibileen and Minnie to deal with the fallout from the book. However, the maids persuade her to go, insisting that there is nothing left for her to do in their town and that she should seize the opportunity for a better life. The following day, Aibileen returns from the grocery store to find Hilly accusing her of stealing silverware. Although the accusation is false, Elizabeth fires Aibileen anyway. Hilly threatens Aibileen with jail if she retaliates, but Aibileen boldly calls Hilly a godless woman, reducing Hilly to tears. Little May tries to stop Aibileen from leaving, but Elizabeth remains unmoved, and Aibileen must walk away from the sobbing child. May is the last child Aibileen cares for, but she takes solace in knowing that her actions have brought about positive change for her community. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay on top of all the latest recaps and never miss a beat. Thank you for watching.